This video is brought to you by Brilliant. While most of the world is actually getting more violent, a geopolitical shift is apparently underway in the Middle East and North Africa, with various states restoring broken diplomatic ties and pushing to end years of conflict that have racked the region. So in this video, we'll take a look at what's going on, and whether, in a rare bit of good news, the Middle East might actually be getting more peaceful. Saudi Arabia and Iran's geopolitical rivalry has been a key dynamic in the Middle East for some time now. It's played out in multiple ways and locations, but most notably in Yemen, which has been devastated by an 8-year civil war. It's often described as a proxy war, with Saudi Arabia leading a coalition in support of the Yemeni government against the Houthi rebel movement, which is backed by Iran. Saudi Arabia and Iran broke formal diplomatic ties in 2016 after Iranian protesters sacked the Saudi embassy in Tehran in response to Saudi Arabia's execution of a prominent Shia Muslim leader. But just this year, a Chinese brokered deal saw Iran and Saudi Arabia agree to restore diplomatic ties, after which the two countries' foreign ministries held official talks for the first time since 2016. The ongoing rapprochement between the countries has helped create a genuine hope for peace in Yemen, and there is an intense diplomatic push to achieve it. Nearly 900 detainees were released as part of a cross-border trust-building prisoner exchange in April. A 6-month truce that expired last October is still broadly holding, according to the UN, and talks aiming for a new and permanent truce are still ongoing, with Saudi and Houthi negotiators meeting in the Yemeni capital in April, alongside Omani mediators. The Houthi side described the talks as serious and positive, while the UN's envoy to Yemen described the ongoing efforts as the closest Yemen has been to real progress towards lasting peace. So things are heading in the right direction, but a lot of issues still persist. Firstly, it's not enough for just the Saudis and Houthis to come to a deal, which is a big ask in and of itself. Consensuses must be built within Yemen's fragmented political and military factions. This includes the Presidential Leadership Council, which is the Saudi-allied ruling body of Yemen's internationally recognised government, various aligned and non-aligned tribal alliances, the Southern Transitional Council, a significant separatist group in South Yemen, and others. As ever, civilians have borne the brunt of this conflict, so even if a sustainable political settlement is reached, then the country will still face a massive humanitarian and economic challenge, with some 17 million people reliant on assistance from aid agencies this year. For more than a decade, Syria has been largely isolated from the rest of the Arab world. Back in 2011, the Arab League voted to suspend Syria from the regional organisation over President Bashar al-Assad's violent suppression of pro-democracy demonstrations, which sent the country spiralling into civil war. A series of Arab nations severed ties with Syria, and some, including Saudi Arabia and Qatar, funded and armed Syrian rebel groups with the goal of bringing down the Assad regime. What's effectively a military stalemate has seen fighting wane in the past couple of years. 2022 and 2023 have seen periods of relative calm in Syria, especially compared to the earlier years of the war, though there have been some violent flare-ups at times. There have been gradual steps towards normalisation with Syria by individual Arab countries in the last few years, but the pace has increased since the devastating earthquake in February 2023. Most notably in May, foreign ministers from the Arab League agreed to readmit Syria into the 22-nation bloc, and Assad himself is expected to attend an Arab League summit in Saudi Arabia later in the month, effectively ending his 12 years of regional isolation. Saudi Arabia and the UAE have been leading this push, and there's been a recent flurry of high-level diplomatic visits. Assad visited the UAE and Oman. The Saudi foreign minister visited Damascus, as has the foreign ministers of Egypt and Jordan. The Syrian foreign minister visited Saudi Arabia and is set to visit Algeria and Tunisia soon. So why have things changed? Well, to put it simply, Arab states have come to the realization that Assad is here to stay, and they've concluded that normalization and engagement with his regime is the best way forward. Cooperation in the aftermath of this year's earthquake accelerated Syria's reintegration, and there were a whole load of things that nearby countries can only really address through diplomacy with Assad. This includes a push to return Syrian refugees from neighbouring countries like Lebanon and Jordan, tackling the production and smuggling of the drug Captagon from Syria, and also dealing with the presence of extremist groups in the country. But enthusiasm for Assad's rehabilitation is far from universal. Some members of the Arab League, particularly Qatar, have been vocal in their opposition. US and EU sanctions against Assad's regime show no signs of being lifted, and the US has criticised the Arab League's readmission of Syria. Countries opposed to normalisation believe that Assad should not be rehabilitated before genuine progress is made towards a political solution. The Syrian opposition fears that if Assad is brought back into the fold without strong guarantees, then it'll effectively have got away with years of brutality, dashing their hopes for accountability and political change. Nevertheless, the UN Syria envoy has expressed some hope that the renewed attention on the country can act as a circuit breaker and unlock long-stalled efforts to move the political process forward. Syria's relationship with Turkey is also showing signs of improvement, reversing the major deterioration of the past decade. From the outset of the civil war, Turkey supported Syrian rebels' attempts to topple Assad, and diplomatic relations were severed in March 2012. The early years of the war saw cross-border clashes, a mutual shooting down of jets, and since 2016, Turkey has carried out a series of direct military interventions, resulting in an occupation of parts of northern Syria. As recently as early 2023, Turkey warned that it may launch a new ground offensive in Syria to target Kurdish militants. But despite this, Russian-backed attempts to reset ties between the two countries are making progress. Syrian and Turkish defence chiefs met in Moscow in December for the first time since 2011, and again in April, as did senior diplomats, with plans for a future summit of foreign ministers. Obviously, there are still plenty of things that both sides want settled, but both countries are working towards diplomatic normalisation. So, is the Middle East and North Africa getting more peaceful? Well, the wave of state-to-state normalisation should probably be welcomed for increasing cooperation and reducing the chances of interstate conflict. And there are reasons to be hopeful for places like Yemen, but there is still a lot of work to be done. Plus, there are places where things obviously aren't getting more peaceful. Sudan, for example, has just recently been plunged into the conflict. Tunisia is taking an authoritarian and repressive turn, and there's been increasing violence in Israel and Palestine, to name just a few. Let us know what direction you think things are going in, and if there are any specific areas you want us to delve deeper into in another video. What do the world's best politicians have in common? They're willing to learn something new every day. And if you think that sounds too hard or too time-consuming, or even just too overwhelming for you to do, then you haven't tried Brilliant.org. Brilliant.org is the best way to learn maths and computer science in a fun and interactive way. That's because Brilliant has literally thousands of lessons, from foundational and advanced maths to skills crucial in the modern world, like AI, data science, neural networks, and more, with new lessons added monthly. Like I said though, the real value here is that you can do this easily every day, truly committing to lifelong learning. Slowly, over time, you'll not only pick up new skills or get better at maths, but you'll also feel the satisfaction that comes with bettering yourself and staying ahead. To try everything Brilliant has to offer, free for a full 30 days, click on the link in the description. Plus, the first 200 of you will get 20% off Brilliant's annual premium subscription.